نرحب بكم حضورنا الكريم في اليوم الختامي لمنتدى دبي العالمي لإدارة المشاريع، والذي يقام في دورته الثامنة تحت رعاية كريمة من سمو الشيخ حمدان بن محمد بن راشد آل مكتوم ولي عهد دبي رئيس المجلس التنفيذي. حضورنا الكريم، لقد شهد يوم أمس ولله الحمد حضورا لافتا في مختلف الجلسات الحوارية التي ناقشت مواضيع متنوعة، مواضيع تفاعلية تطرقت إلى تنمية المجتمع وتعزيز جودة الحياة والتجارب العالمية الناجحة لدولة الإمارات في مجال الابتكار واستشراف مستقبل إدارة المشاريع. لهذا أعزائنا الحضور، تسعى دولة الإمارات لتحقيق مستقبل مستدام، وتوجت جهود الدولة في مجال الاستدامة بإعلان صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان رئيس الدولة عام 2023 عاما للاستدامة في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة تحت شعار اليوم للغد، والذي يواكب استضافة الدولة لكوب 28 لتسليط الضوء أكثر على الاستدامة وعن السياسات والأنظمة الجديدة في هذا المجال. نفتتح بإذن الله تعالى وبتوفيقه منتدى دبي العالمي لإدارة المشاريع بجلسة نقاشية تحت عنوان الاستدامة في إدارة المشاريع، تديرها المنسق والمعلم الدولي شيرين متولي، فلتتفضل مشكورة لتقديم الضيوف المشاركين. هلا رحبنا بهم جميعا.
Assalamu alaikum, ahlan wa marhaba bikum. A very warm welcome to you all. I'm Shireen Mitwalli. It's with my absolute pleasure to be with you to moderate this next session. This particular session is going to be discussing sustainability in project management. The main aim of this particular session is to discuss the importance of sustainability in project management and how we can actually achieve this in our complex time. What are we going to be discussing over the next 45 minutes is this: how sustainable projects can result in a more sustainable economy for the UAE and Dubai in particular. How to make the projects sustainable during the whole project life cycle. The areas where sustainability impacts on project management and the process and practices. Exploring the types of practices and standards to promote sustainable development. And last but not least, we're going to discuss investigating how nations can achieve their zero emissions targets through their sustainable projects and sustainable project management. Now, I'd like to now introduce our esteemed panel with us. First up, we have the Managing Director and CEO of Dubai Electricity and Water Fund. You know who he is from DEWA. His Excellency Saeed Mohammed Al Taya, with over 35 years worth of experience in telecommunications, energy, water, infrastructure, oil and gas, and under his leadership since 1992, DEWA has achieved unprecedented success. Next up, we have the Deputy Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, His Excellency Sharif Al Alama, with a history at ADNOC as Senior Vice President overseeing strategical planning, engineering, project management, and operations. Last but not least, we have business and sustainability and author of the $1 Trillion Shift. We have Marga Hock, who is a business leader in her own right. She's the CEO of several different businesses and an advisor on sustainability and the G20. Ladies and gentlemen, please, our esteemed panelists to the stage. Thank you. Our esteemed panel, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so my first question for you, Your Excellency Saeed Al Taya. What are the main sustainable projects that support the economy of Dubai?
First of all, let me start with our clear strategy in energy and in water also. As you know that we have Dubai Clean Strategy 2050, and also we have Net Zero Dubai Carbon strategy, Energy 2050, to achieve 100% renewable. Now in Dubai, we have actually many mega projects. One of them is Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park. Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park consists of 5,000 megawatt. It has two different types of technology. It has the parabolic technology and molten salt technology. Now, in this project, we can store power as a storage for about 15 hours. As you know that the PV will serve only for a few hours during the day. And definitely you need the storage. Especially today, you see the weather is raining and cloudy, so we are unable to produce 100% from the solar. Maybe we are producing 50% or 30%. During this region, you need a storage. So the challenge in the future, worldwide actually, it is a storage, where you can store maybe, for us, especially in Mohammed bin Rashid, we can store about 700 megawatt.
Wow.
We benchmark this project with US and Europe, and we never seen such a project with this size. The investment in this project is about $4.2 billion US. And it will reduce the CO2 6.5 million on a yearly basis. This is the mega project. The other project also, it is under construction, Hatta project. Hatta project is a unique project actually. Hatta, it will be commissioned at the Q4, I believe, next year. And Hatta will support Dubai with 250 megawatt clean energy, actually. And presently, the total load in Hatta, it's about 30 megawatt. Second thing about sustainability, what you ask, actually, per capita in Dubai, we done a lot of effort, actually, in order to improve the efficiency and to change the mindset of people. We are able, for the last 10 years, reduce the per capita for the water. It's about 23%. When I say per capita, I mean per person, per year. So also for the power, we were able to reduce and change the mindset, 70% also. This is definitely through many programs, actually, green. Another mega project is a green building, actually, and the retrofit of this building. For the last 7 years, we were able to retrofit about 7,900 buildings. And during this time, we were able to improve the efficiency of this building 30% to 40%. It means that there is a lot of reduction in CO2. Besides that, also regarding the electrical vehicle, we established actually more than 350 working station for the electrical vehicles. This definitely by 2030 we'll have more than 1,000 for the electrical vehicle. And also we have the again is the other mega project where we improve the efficiency of the plant, especially in Jebel Ali Mobi, the efficiency is about over 90%. So all these projects actually, it will reduce the emission, it will improve the efficiency, and it's need a commitment from the utility.
So there's a lot of projects that you are working on.
Definitely.
Absolutely. All right, my following question is for Your Excellency Sharif Al-Alama. Now, as the Deputy Minister of Energy, can you tell us a little bit more about the major sustainable projects in the UAE and how you're supporting the country's economy?
First of all, let me start off with the announcement that was made by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed that in 2023, the top 5 priorities for the government of the UAE, one of the top 5 priorities is sustainability and environment. And he announced that in the first cabinet meeting of the year. Looking at it from a federal perspective, I will mention some of the main projects in the different categories, and please do bear with me. Starting off with solar, and as His Excellency Saeed Al-Tahir mentioned, is we are very proud of what has been delivered through the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, the largest single-site solar park in the world. And as His Excellency mentioned, by the year 2030, it will have a capacity of 5 gigawatts of power. Looking at Abu Dhabi, we have also, this year, we are anticipating that there will be the delivery of Al Dhafra project. It's a 2 gigawatt project, the largest single solar project in the world.
Wow.
And that will increase the total contribution of solar capacity in Abu Dhabi to 3.2%. We have also, when we move from solar, we have in Abu Dhabi, we are very proud of having a peaceful nuclear program. And this is basically the Baraka nuclear energy plant. Currently, we have 3 out of 4 small modular reactors in commercial operation, producing around 4.2 gigawatts of power. And by the year 2024, we anticipate the 4th reactor to come on board. Once we achieve that, it will have a capacity of 5.6 gigawatts. It will reduce around 22.4 million tons of CO2 on an annual basis. Just to keep things into perspective, that from the statistics I've seen corresponds to around 80% of the vehicles in the UAE. So literally removing that amount of cars from the streets, so which is a major achievement. It will contribute to 25% of our commitments and our pledges with regards to protecting the environment, plus it will give us a boost when it comes to energy security. CCUS, carbon capture and utilization and storage. In Abu Dhabi, we have Al Riyadh plant. It's a plant that actually captures on an annual basis 0.8 million tons of CO2 from Emirates Steel. And it injects the CO2 back into the oil reservoirs for enhanced oil recovery. It's the first of its kind in the MENA region, a commercial scale CCUS plant. We have also waste to energy. BIA, along with Masdar, announced last year that they have commissioned their waste to energy plant in Sharjah, basically addressing around 300,000 tons of waste from landfills and converting that into 30 megawatts of power. And finally, of course, in our infrastructure projects, of course, us as a ministry, we have an infrastructure arm, and sustainability and resilient standards are part of the design we implement into our buildings. Of course, part of it is to make sure that there is a long life for our assets, but more importantly, we drive down the costs of operations and maintenance. Taking all of this into context, I want to also touch a little bit upon the economic side. So part of it I mentioned, like the longevity of our assets, the reduction in terms of the cost of operation and maintenance. There is also another initiative that we are working along with the authorities in the country, is establishing an electricity market. And the idea over here is to allow the authorities to trade electricity between themselves. Of course, the benefits over there are huge in terms of reducing the cost or the tariffs, in improving the efficiency, and more importantly, we are also interconnected in our grid with the GCC. This will allow us to trade electricity with other countries, looking into peak times. So having a peak time in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai would be different than Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. And that allows us to trade excess power that we have. And this contributes heavily to our economy.
That's excellent. Fantastic. Now I'm going to move to yourself, Margot Hock here. I know that you've taken the time, you're the CEO of several different businesses, and you took the time out to write this book, The $1 Trillion Shift, which I believe has 50 case studies of sustainability in there. Why was this such an important topic for you to write about?
Well, that goes back actually to the period where I was CEO of several companies myself. So it started when I was responsible for business myself, when I noticed that, of course, there's a huge need to transform business and cities for the better, so that they're climate resilient and so that they're lasting in the future, hence sustainable. But equally, when I was responsible for companies, I noticed that, for instance, I led a construction company, a listed company. And to give you a real-life example, I visited the construction sites often, and there I noticed that other companies were actually taking the waste from my construction site. It was called waste back then. And I had to pay them to take the materials away. And I shifted that. So for instance, I started a new company, and that company recycled the materials from my construction site back into the loop, being new materials. And that made sense from a sustainability standpoint, but it also made a lot of sense from a business standpoint, because guess what? A couple of years later, that part of the company was more successful than the other ones, had a lower risk and a higher margin, and we started to do these recycling activities for our own company, but later on we worked for many other companies because we were ahead of the time in terms of innovation and were successful and made a higher profit because of it. And from that point onwards, I saw that, as I call it, business for good is good business. So you can make a profit with sustainable business. And that is so hugely important, as those two gentlemen illustrate. And of course, I mean, everybody, the whole world looks at Dubai because things are being done here, very innovative and at large scale, as those projects illustrated. And that's hugely important. To give you a little bit of a context, we always have annually the World Overshoot Day, for instance, and that's the day in the year where actually we used up the reserves of the planet as far as the world can recuperate from it. And this year, that was the 28th of July, and you can imagine we're only halfway, a little bit over halfway through the year then, and the rest of the year we actually cannot account for. And that means that currently we use 1.7 times the planet, so we need almost 2 planets, we have only 1. So we drastically need to change. And you see throughout the world many companies and many countries and many cities that take what I call incremental small steps. But if you bear in mind that the world population is still growing, that we have upcoming economies and a growing middle class, that means that actually, as a result, we work backwards. So we need big innovations. We need to use technology to the max, and we need to do it at scale. And those things will really turn the tide so that we have a lasting world. And you know, we just had World Economic Forum in Davos, of course. I don't know if you saw it or if you attended it. The theme this year was a fragmented world, and that's unfortunately what we're looking at. But we need collaboration throughout this world, and we need big steps to make real progress for everyone, because in the end, there's no business in a fragmented world. You know, there's only business in a lasting world.
Yep, we have one planet, right?
That's what we need to achieve, yes.
On that topic, I know that you're an advisor on several different businesses, also on the G20. What do you see from a macro scale? What's happening around the world? Can you give us some examples of really superior, successful, sustainable projects that are happening internationally?
Yeah, well, that's actually a huge question.
I know.
We can talk about that
for an
hour.
Can you give us like the top one that you're seeing?
Yeah, I make a couple of short notes. So if you talk at a country level, what you see on average, that those countries who have set, when I'm talking about climate change, to take that topic as an example, who have set laws, who made it tangible, that's actually not a can do, but a must do to change, who have set laws, make more progress in general, because that's a dot on the horizon, like for instance Dubai has made his 2040 plan. When there's a dot on the horizon and that's fixed and it's long term, then that's a good foundation for business, because business needs security, it's a good foundation for investors, and for everybody it's a straight direction. When you see then also, when it's not only a dot on the horizon, but there's also a smart planning and a concrete phasing and milestones and measurement of those milestones, then progress is going even faster. You see that for a few countries in Europe, like the Scandinavian countries. You see that to a less extent, but also in, for instance, Canada. And of course, you see that here in the Emirates, where that's being done very concrete. What you also see is a new shift, and that's also due to technology progress, fortunately, because technology is our biggest ally in the stride against climate change. You see that the tide is turning from what I would call less bad, which is still important because, for instance, energy efficiency measures, if they're done at large scale, they give profitability because it reduces costs and it gives room for further improvement. But you see more radical approaches to what I call positive impact. So that's moving beyond the zero and to see, can we not create a real positive impact? And His Excellency has been talking about carbon capture, for instance. So what you see is whole new businesses coming up that actually take the carbon out of the air. Because imagine, even if we have zero emittance, if everybody stops emitting and we reach the zero line, there's still billions of tons of CO2 that have been taken from the air. So to take carbon out is a really positive impact. You see it in houses, for instance, that due to all the new, and His Excellency has been talking about solar and other renewable energy forms, you see such progression in the technology that we're well able, and it's not even so complex, to build energy positive houses and buildings instead of zero emittance only. So that means that those buildings and those houses create more renewable energy than they need for themselves, thus they can supply cars, electric bikes, but also buildings surrounding them. And those are buildings with a positive impact. And that's what we need. And if we need to look at a totally different problem for instance, the plastic pollution in the oceans, if we don't radically change, we have in 2050 more plastic in the sea than fish. I mean, it's unimaginable, but unfortunately it's true. So big movements to stop the pollution by plastic, because we recycle plastics only 8.9% currently, to drastically change that, but also to take it out of the oceans and upcycle materials. That's also a form of positive impact, taking waste and making it into a higher level products.
Absolutely. Great insights. Now, Your Excellency Said, I know the target is for zero emissions. So tell us a little bit, I know you've mentioned a lot in terms of what DEWA is doing. Tell us in terms of how DEWA and the UAE is working towards the target of zero emissions.
Definitely. First, let me start with Dubai, because 3 years ago we decided that no more gas turbine, no more boilers, and this indicates that we're going to have a good planning in having more green projects, especially either BV or CSP. And I think we put a good program and mechanism have been developed in the energy sector, and also in transportation, in industry, in building. And West, I told you about the building, about the retrofit. We are going to have 30,000 buildings being retrofit. And also, in terms of air conditioning, we establish Empower as a district cooling, where we can save about 40% in energy. So, and as you know that most of the load in Dubai or in UAE actually, air conditioning, 70% of the load, air conditioning. If we are able to improve the efficiency, as I mentioned, by 40%, it means that we will have also more green project. And in the future now, from now up to 2050, we're going to have Mohammed bin Rashid, as I mentioned, solar park, and then we have more project, either CSP, because we need the CSP as a storage, BV will be running in limited time, and this is the future, I think.
Absolutely. And Your Excellency Sharif, what about yourself when it comes to it from a Dubai perspective? How are we working towards a zero emission target?
Yeah. As you know, we in the UAE were the first country in the region to actually announce the strategic initiative of achieving net zero by 2050. Currently, under the leadership of Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, we are preparing our NDC, the Nationally Determined Contribution submission. This includes a pledge from the UAE to reduce 31% of our GHG emissions by the year 2030 compared to business as usual. There are three areas that we are focusing on, three strategies and roadmaps that are being developed. First, by the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment in conjunction with all the federal entities and all the local entities in the 7 Emirates, is to establish the net zero strategy and roadmap. And this is basically covering all sectors, power, water, transportation, buildings, and agriculture. It includes, and I go back to what was mentioned, even to the extent of planting mangroves in terms of, being CO2 sinks. In the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, of course, we have two main strategies that we're working on. The first was the Energy Strategy 2050 that we launched back in 2017. Back then, it has an energy mix of 50% clean energy sources and 50% of fossil fuel-based. Of course, a lot has changed in the past 5 years. One is, of course, the excellent initiative taken by the government of Dubai to actually replace clean coal in the Hisyan project with natural gas. We are currently refreshing the energy strategy, and we are anticipating that there will be a bigger penetration of solar along with energy storage batteries in the future. And this will be launched, inshallah, just before COP28. Finally, we are also working with our stakeholders on the national hydrogen strategy. Hydrogen, we believe, is the fuel of the future. It will be used in power generation, it will be used in transportation, and many other uses we anticipate it and its derivatives, it being ammonia or methanol. We are currently, as per the mandate from the PMO, the Prime Minister's Office, is by 2031, the UAE is to be amongst the top 10 global producers of hydrogen. And we are establishing the strategy to actually achieve that. Our forecasts currently are by the year 2050, we would be hitting somewhere in the range between 14 and 22 million tons of hydrogen per annum, which is considerable. And we are targeting 25% of key markets for hydrogen in the future.
Thank you for the update. And Margot, for yourself, I know that you're on an international scale. What are some of the best practices that you're seeing internationally for a zero emission target?
You're talking about countries or companies or?
Country, yeah, some of the best practices from around the globe.
Best practices, often it's not comparable because it very much depends the type of country and where you're coming from. So if you're looking at the countries that have already achieved it, it's like, for instance, Bhutan and Suriname, but there's a lot of wood there. So, it's quite easy to have zero emissions there. You could even say that countries like that, the expectations could be higher because it's relatively easy to achieve it. So you could expect actually a positive impact instead of only zero emission. But those countries have already reached it. Then there's, in total, 110 countries around the world that actually agreed to the 2050 target of zero emissions. So that's in total great progress. That's quite a lot of countries by now. If you look at who's well on their way, it's a number of countries, Northern Europe, where, as I said in the beginning, there's a combination of the law that's set in place, like climate laws in whatever shape or form, and there's milestones and a fundamental planning to achieve it in those countries. Canada is doing relatively well, and then you have, of course, the UAE, who's coming up really, really quickly because they do a lot, and they do it fast, and they do it at scale,
Absolutely.
so that's going rather well. Most countries lag behind. There are much more countries not doing well than there are countries that are doing well, because they struggle with their political system, they struggle to be aligned, and they tend to have the opinion that you have to choose technologies or renewable energy forms. And that's why I'm so happy to hear, for instance, that UAE and Dubai and Abu Dhabi are boosting hydrogen, because we don't have to choose that it's only wind or solar or hydrogen. It's a mix that we must use, and we must more or less use everything that we got. And you see that countries that do that, of course, create much more progress. Also countries that are positive about public-private partnerships, because if you look, for instance, at the 100 largest economies by revenue in the world, 100 largest economies by revenue in the world, 69 is companies and not countries. So the power of business is huge, and the innovation power and the capital of business is huge. So that's what I very much like about Dubai. It's purpose-driven but performance-led, you could say. So it's combining great leadership from the government, but also with the innovation and capital power of the private sector. And that's creating great progress as well.
Amazing, some really great points there. Your Excellency Saeed, I know your team is really important to yourself. What are some of the skills and competencies that you personally look for when it comes to your leadership team, when it comes to sustainability?
I think, first of all, let me state that our role model is His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who is leading by example. And I think regarding my team or the leaders who are working in sustainability, I think they have to be committed and they have to have a clear vision, because it is very important, and a clear roadmap, and with the success, objective in order to be achieve the result or the objective of the strategy. And also they should have a critical thinking.
Your Excellency Sharif, what standards in the UAE are you putting into place to ensure the sustainability of national projects and the operations?
We've worked on a number of standards, like there is the Green Building Code that we have developed, and it's basically been based on best international practices and sustainability standards. It also being developed at a federal level ensures that the minimum standards are applied at the different 7 Emirates. Of course, the net goal or the net target over there is to achieve net zero. We also have developed guidelines for efficient constructability, and basically this is capitalizing and utilizing construction technologies, enhancing construction processes, and also embracing circular economy, basically minimizing waste and minimizing resources use. I'll touch upon very quickly also is the demand supply management program that was endorsed and approved by the cabinet. And there is a national committee that I chair. Basically, the demand supply management program is part of our strategy. It targets to reduce or to enhance the efficiency of buildings by 40%. It covers all sectors, so it has buildings, industries, transportation, and agriculture. We in the ministry are currently working on 442 federal buildings to retrofit them and achieve somewhere in the range of 25 to 30% reduction in electricity consumption and water consumption. Also, we are in conjunction with the Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology are issuing a number of equipment specs and standards. This is basically high efficient equipment and machinery. The idea over here is to achieve a reduction in consumption of electricity and water. The targets we have set to the year 2050 is around 24 terawatt hour reduction in electricity consumption and around 53 million meter cubes of water consumption by the year 2050.
That's fantastic. Margot, I know you were discussing on an international level. What would you see or foresee here in the region in making sure that, for example, this particular region has a zero emission target?
Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear.
We spoke about earlier in terms of from an international scale. What do you see for the region?
Well, what you see is that rapidly, the targets go up because technology progresses and what we can do progresses, and it should. So you see that much higher targets, more nearby, come up, like Your Excellencies has explained here in Dubai. You see a lot of progress being made around there. I think if we would put our minds to it and we combine different technologies, we could move beyond efficiency to zero emissions and beyond that, because the technology is there. And it's only for us to make it work for us in concrete large project where we combine different things so that we can really, have like moonshot changes. And those big radical changes is what we definitely need. And we see more and more the shift to that direction.
Absolutely. And how can we make our project sustainable during the whole project life cycle?
That's a good question, because it's not only the investment at the beginning that counts, but of course, if we're talking about roses and houses and roads, etc., it's throughout the whole life cycle what is important. So what we should do is consider the benefits of projects throughout the whole life cycle. So for instance, if we build houses, it's the people living in it that determine the sustainability in the end. If we sell textiles, it's the users that define the sustainability rate. 70% of everything we talk about here is decided by the consumer or the user. So we should consider the whole life cycle. Then also it's important that there's a financial change of system, because before we would talk about the investment, the capital needed for the investment, and then another department and another person and another company would maintain the building, for instance. But if you talk about sustainability, about LED lighting, but also new ways of energy in houses, the investment might be higher in the initial beginning, but the costs later on will be much lower. So if you don't consider the whole life cycle, often sustainability proposals seem more expensive whilst they're actually cheaper in the long run. So you have to look at the whole project time, you have to focus on the consumer, on the users. You see a lot of companies, for instance, aware of that. Like, to give you an example, IKEA, for instance, knowing that they have access to millions of consumers, they can even inspire to move beyond and become more sustainable in the end. So imagine you building a sustainable building or area of houses, and those houses are truly sustainable. Not only will the life cycle of the whole building be good and the consumers, but probably it will be an inspiration for people to spread that out through other aspects of their life, hence also having the value of creating more awareness. And so it has more and more impact. Those are a couple of notes for the life cycle.
Fantastic. Thank you, Margot. And Your Excellency Saeed, one of my final questions to yourself is, we have a lot of leaders amongst us in the room and professionals. What would be your advice to them in terms of from a sustainable project management?
I think always I say that you should have a clear vision and a clear roadmap with a strategic objective and commitment to the vision. These are the main thing, I think, 4 pillars. It is important, a commitment there to the vision. Once you have a commitment to the vision, you should have clear KPIs, and you should achieve your KPIs. And also, you should be able to select the right people You cannot do the work yourself, but I think you need to manage people. And this is also important in order
To inspire them,
to
right?
inspire them and also to achieve your KPIs.
Absolutely, great points there. Your Excellency Sharif, what's your advice to the many professionals and leaders that are among us in the room in terms of a sustainable project management?
I think one thing I want to say is the road to actually achieving our sustainable targets, achieving net zero by 2050, is full of challenges. And I don't think anybody would say that this road is easy. It's going to be very challenging, and it will require quite a lot of effort from everybody. We really need to work hard in terms of preparing ourselves for the challenges that are to come. We need to enhance our skills. We need to develop technologies, and we need to focus a lot on R&D. I believe we need to also have the proper mindset. Sustainability for us really is not what you might call it a tick of a box, and then you go on. For us, sustainability is a mindset that we have to adopt, because this is something that we owe for the generations that are to come.
Absolutely, 100%. And Margot, to yourself, what would be your advice to the many leaders and professionals in the room that are involved in sustainable project management?
Well, I would like to build on what His Excellency said about the vision. I mean, it starts with a bold idea, and we need big ideas, as I shared earlier. And then you need two things, at least. That's one, that you're going to demonstrate the endurance that is needed, because as said, it's not easy. You should be willing, to persevere all the roadblocks and continue doing it until you succeed. The average time between an idea and execution is 7 years, and we want it to be shorter, but you need a lot of willing and mindset to see it through. Second, you have to be willing to share, because nobody can do things alone. We need combinations of public-private partnership. We need combinations of consortia of businesses to do it together, because doing it together with other partners, with other knowledge, with capital, or with competencies or assets you might need, means it happens quicker and it happens at a larger scale. So be willing to collaborate and to share. Have the endurance, have a vision, and then be practical and organize it well, as was said, with clear milestones and a roadmap. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen.
That's fantastic. So as a recap, just in terms of that final points there, His Excellency definitely mentioned in terms of, you've got to lead by example, look at the vision, for example, that's been set forward. Your Excellency Sharif, definitely, I loved your point in terms of changing the mindset, and that's how we need to get started. And finally, for yourself, Margot, I love how you mentioned in terms of the fact that we need to share, because it is really very much a collaborative effort. Ladies and gents, can I get a big round of applause, please, for each one of our panelists? Your Excellency Saeed, Your Excellency Sharif, and Margot, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.